Hi. So the first story that I want to tell you about Catalonia to help you understand what's going on there has to do with a movie that's premiering this week. It's called Fènix 1123, Fènix 1123. And it's a story of a boy. His name is Èric Bertran. And it's a story about a 14-year-old boy in 2004 who was really frustrated that the local supermarket didn't label their white label products, the generic products, in Catalan. It's actually the law in Catalonia that if you sell a product there, you have to label it in Catalan. But the truth is that many companies don't follow the rules. And it's frustrating. And, I can sort of identify with this 14-year-old boy because I used to do the same thing. My parents made me go to Sunday school when I was 14, and I wrote the Secretary of State and I said, can my parents really make me go? And she wrote back and she said, yeah, you really have to go. And another time I wrote a tuna fish company, and I said, the lid of your tuna fish can broke and it sprayed oil all over me. And I'm really mad. I'm going to tell all my friends not to buy your tuna fish. It's ridiculous. I was 14 years old. But I got back a letter from the tuna fish company, and they said, oh, we're really sorry, Mrs. Castro, and here's some coupons of tuna fish. Well, what happened to this boy, Èric Bertran? He writes a letter to Dia, this supermarket chain in Barcelona, saying, it's not really fair that you don't label your products in Catalan. What's the deal? And being 14 years old in 2004, he had been reading Harry Potter. And so he signed his letter from the order of the Army of the Fènix, from the Order of the Fènix, the group in, I think it's Harry Potter 5. And he said, and if you don't listen to my letter, the next time I'm not going to be so nice. Did they send him a package of, creamed corn with labels in Catalan? No, I'm afraid they didn't. Instead, they sent his letter to the Spanish government and to the anti-terrorism unit. I don't know if they sent it, but anyway, they reported him. And a couple months later, 30 armed police stormed his house, took away his computers and his brother's computer. His brother was 16 or 17, searched all through the house looking for bombs, and basically threatened him and said that they were going to put him in, juvenile detention for the rest of his life, and he was a terrorist, and this is a terrible thing. This is a boy who wanted to have Catalan labeling on food. Kind of a total overreaction. And what happened after, he didn't get arrested that night, I don't believe. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm hoping to get more details about it. I actually did read the book about it, it was really interesting, but it was a long time ago, so I've forgotten some of the details. But this is sort of the main gist of the story. What happened afterwards is that Catalan politicians were actually pretty afraid to stick up for this boy because nobody wanted to be tainted with terrorism. Everybody was afraid that they were going to be seen as, a friend to some terrorist. This is a 14-year-old boy. He's not a terrorist. But nobody knew. They were all afraid. And so, for me, this is kind of a universal story about how governments overreach and overreact. And even when they find out that there's no problem there's no terrorist, this boy was not part of an army, he was an avid reader. Even when they found out, they did not apologize. They didn't say, oh, we're really sorry. No, they took him to the courthouse in Madrid, which is, I don't know how many miles from Barcelona, 300, 400, 500, something like that, really far away from his house, as if, they took someone from Massachusetts and hauled him down to Washington, D.C. to testify. And in fact, the woman, the judge who he had to testify to, insisted that he speak in Spanish and was really rude to him and threatened him. And it was awful. And, I keep feeling like government is over-encroaching on my personal liberties. And this is a story that shows that. And so I think it's a story that we all need to know about. So there's one more piece of the story that I didn't get in the original take. And that is that a big part of the story has to do with Catalan versus Spanish. And the fact that this supermarket chain, Dia, only sells its generic products in Spanish and not in Catalan, and that they don't follow the law, and that the boy who complained about the lack of Catalan labeling, instead of getting support from the Spanish government, got called a terrorist by the Spanish government. And the fear of Catalan politicians to stand up for him. So there's this whole undercurrent of language policy going on top of the story that maybe Americans can understand better in terms of the government overreacting and the balance between liberty and freedom of speech.